So welcome back. I think we are going to carry on from where we left last. Where we left last was we had discussed details to do with CSS selectors. We had looked at simple selectors. We had looked at combinator selectors, including descendant, child, next sibling, and so on and so forth. We looked at pseudo class selectors. We looked at pseudo element selectors, and I think we also looked at attribute selectors. So I think with those ones in mind, the next logical thing to do is probably now to start looking at other CSS properties that we can be able to change. And in this particular class, I'm going to focus on four things. One of them is going to be colors. Then we're going to look at backgrounds, then borders. Then after borders, we're going to look at fonts. So I think that should be able to cover much of what we intend to have achieved within the last two. So that should put us in a position where now we are able to effectively target elements on our page, and of course now being able to make some adjustments on the look and feel of the content within our page. So I think let's start with that and see how that works out. So what I will do is I will open my Visual Studio Code.
I can't see your screen.
All right, let me share my screen. I want to believe that is now visible.
Yes.
Awesome. So I'll just open the recent folder that we're working on. Probably can access it from recent here. So I'll close all these open editors, and I'll just come back to my notes here. So today I want us to look at first of all CSS colors. We want to discuss how to use colors in CSS. Now, colors are a very important aspect of the designing our web pages, because the screens that people use to access this is in color format, and as such, color is an important component. Now, in CSS, there are four ways within which we can use colors. Well, let's just use yeah, there are actually four ways within which we can define our colors. One of them is using the color name. So one is using color name. So you can use a color name in CSS, and I'll give us an example. So let me create a new file here and call it colors.css. Actually, let me just call it styling css.html, because you're going to use it for several other things. I'll put emmet here. Sorry, I'll generate emmet. Why isn't emmet picking? Oh, it's because I called this thing a wrong name. Rename it HTML. Yeah, so when I pick that, yeah, it should be able to pick now. It's the format that was wrong. So here I'll simply say styling content. So we want to use this page to style our content. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to demonstrate with some text. Then we'll see how color actually applies to it. So I'll put a paragraph here, and I'll say lorem 30. Then within this lorem here, I'll put some span, and I'll probably target the element inside this span. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'll come up here inside head, and I'll create my style. Of course, we have decided how styles can be added. This is what we call a page level style. So it's going to apply to all the components on the page. I could actually use an external file like we had used CSS styles here before, but again, for demo purposes, this is going to be much more convenient for purposes of this demonstration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a paragraph, and I'm going to pick any span that is within a paragraph. So that is actually a combinator selector. Then from that, I can put the color. So to change the color of the font, this one, we use the color property. So color, the American style. Then now, we said you can use the color name. As you can see, they're shown here. You can use brown, that is a color name. And if I was to run this page, you can see that color has actually changed to the brown. You can see that color has changed to brown. So I'll display them side by side so that you're able to see. As you're making the changes, you're able to see what's happening there, like that. So I'll hide this. Yeah, so as we're typing God, we are also going to be able to change this. So I can change it to red. And as you can see, now that is red. I can change it to blue. Of course, blue. And you can use any color name that you know, something like there's a version of red called crimson, which is that. So you can see now it becomes that. So that's one way that you can be able to change any color. Now, this is standard. When you're talking about colors, this is the standard way of changing colors, whether it's for text, whether it's for background, whether it's for highlight, whatever it is. As long as you're changing anything to do with color, then these are the techniques that we are going to use. So there's using text, using name rather. Then we can also use RGB function. So the RGB function is the red, green, and blue. So red, green, and blue. These are the primary colors that we have, and all colors can be created from these three colors. So, and most people like using RGB, and especially for those people who are into print, so they like using RGB. But you might also prefer using RGB. So to use RGB, if I wanted to use the red color over here, what I'll simply do is to say RGB. I'll give red number 255 because that's the highest. Then I'll give green 0 and blue 0. That is actually red. So 255 is the highest number, 0 is the lowest number. 255 gives me red in full, 0 gives me 0 blue, 0 green rather, and the next 0 gives me 0 blue. So that would mean it will give me red. So if I come here and replace this one with RGB, simply just RGB. Then of course I'll be asked for the color. I'll set 255 for red. Well, I need to give it the color first of all. Color, property. I need to give property. Then I'll say RGB. Then I'll put 255, 0 and 0. You can see that is still red. If I wanted blue, I'll put here 0. And I'll put here, that will be black. I'll put here 0 and I'll put blue here, 255. That should give me blue. And if I wanted green, I'll put here 0, then I'll put here 255. That should give me green. So if I mix it in any scenario, like maybe say I want 10 of this and that of that and 80 of this, it will see that's the exact color of that. So if I say this here is 225, you can see the shade has changed. If I say this is 180, the shade has changed. If I say this is 107, the shade has also changed. So I can play with whichever shade I want by just mixing these three colors. That's the RGB function. As I can see, it will tell me how much red is there, how much green is there, and how much blue is there to make up this color. I don't know what color that is, but if that is the color that you're chosen between you and the designer, or that's your preferred color, then that's actually how you can be able to use the RGB function. So that's the second way of using RGB. That's the second way of adding colors. The third way you can add colors in CSS is using what we call the hex. Hex is the hexadecimal value of a particular color. So hex is very common in everyday practice. I personally prefer to use the hexadecimal value of any color because I have now a standard color that is initiated with um, with with a with a with a hash. So I don't know the hex for a particular value, so I can simply say hex for red. Just do a Google search for red. You'll get some various versions of red. So if I come here, these are the color names. Let me see this. Yeah, so these are the shades of red that you'll find. So this is the red, this is maroon, and so forth and so forth. So instead of using the RGB, I prefer sometimes to use the hex value. So if I wanted to use red, I can simply pick this value over here. So when I'll come to my styling, I'll comment this, and I'll say color. So I'll just come back to my page here, and I'll say color. Then I'll simply put the hex value over there like that. You can see that changes it. So for X value, I simply put the X value similar to how I was putting the name. It's only the RGB that now allows me to be able to use the RGB function and provide the three different colors that I want to use. As I'd said, personally, I prefer to use the hex values most of the time, and you'll find that most people actually prefer to use the hex value. So I can come and put this darker shade like this maroon over here. So I'll put that. I'll remove this, of course. And when you come back here, you realize that it has actually changed to that shade of maroon, which is a darker shade of red. Okay, so yeah, that's another way of using hex. Of course, there is the other method of using colors, which is called the HSL, or the hue, saturation, and lighting. Some people prefer to use HSL or hue, saturation, and lighting to define their colors. That's also a function just like RGB. So you can also use that if you like it. So what I could do here is to say, to give the HSL for red. So if I want color red, I'll say the hue is 0, which means red. The saturation is 100%, and the intensity is 50 for the lightness. So that will give me red. So you can get this chart over here, and it will be able to tell you exactly how the hue, saturation, and lighting works if you need to understand its concept. But the whole point is you have some degree, which is hue, you have some saturation, and of course you also have the intensity or lighting if you would prefer. So HSL for red is actually this. So 0, 100%, 50%. So if I wanted to show this as red, to show this as red, so instead of using color, I would simply say color will be HSL of 0, 100%, and 50% of the lighting, and that should convert it to red, as you can be able to see. So it will depend on how or which method you would prefer to use as far as the color is concerned. So most people prefer to use either the hex value or the color name. They're much easier to work with. Color name is even easier because you know colors by their names, and hex is good because it's standard, which means the shade is going to be exactly the same across all the browsers that you'll be accessing. Remember, we said that each browser has its own inbuilt style. So probably when you say crimson, the hex value might not be the same across both. But if I use the exact hexadecimal value, it must be consistent across all the devices that you're looking for back to back. Then also, you can be able to use another function called RGBA. So it's just RGB here, but with alpha. Alpha means you're adding some sort of uh, opacity to the color. So if I wanted to do red and I wanted some light shade of red. I want to add some tint to the red. I could also use RGBA. So I don't know if that's going to be number 5, but let's just assume it's number 5. So RGBA. So that is red, green, blue with alpha. So red, green, blue with alpha or opacity. How dark or light you want it to be, where 1 is 100% dark and 0 is 100% light. So it is between 0 and 1. 0 for 0%, 1 100%. So you can play with any value in between. So let's say I wanted to have a shade of red here, but I wanted it at say at 50% opacity. What I would have done here is to come and simply put here color. Then I'll say RGBA, that is RGB with alpha. Then I say red is 255, green is 0 and blue is 0, but I want the alpha to be maybe 0.5. So that means the shade will be, you can see the shade is actually 50%. If I say 0.1, that's 1%. So you can see it's very, very light in the background. If I say 0.75, that's 75%. You can see it becomes dark. And of course, if I say 1, then that's 100%. So that is the actual color. So you can always play with this one, and this is going to be useful when you're looking at things like gradient, when you want to change from a darker shade to a lighter shade or vice versa, or things like that. So it's something that actually you can still be able to use to define your colors. So these are the 5 ways that we can use to define colors within CSS. Any question?
No, it's okay.
All right, so since colors is fine, let's now look at what we call backgrounds. Backgrounds. So backgrounds allow us to be able to add some sort of backgrounds to components, and with that we are now able to define certain things, like we can put a photo on a background, we can put a color, we can also repeat whether the photo is there or not, we can decide if the content is scrollable in terms of position, you can decide where to place it, and so many other things. So this is powerful because as you design your web page or your application, then you have control over what you want to place where. So I'll begin with, first of all, the types of backgrounds that we can be able to put. Then we're going to look at the other properties as we move along. All right. So let's say, for example, on the body of this page, I wanted to have a very light shade of brown for the entire background of the page. So we have the background color. Let me start with the background color. Let me use color for English, color for British English, but of course in CSS we use color for American English. All right, so kindly don't confuse that. Color is for the American spelling, not the British spelling. If I put a U here, this will not work. So as you can see, that won't work. So the color is the American spelling when we come to CSS. So if I wanted to put a background of some light shade of some light shade of red on this, maybe say red at uh, maybe say 20%, I would come here and I'll say on the body of my document, add a background color of RGBA. I want red 255, 0, 0 at 0.2 or 20%. So you can see the color will be some slight shade of red. If I make it 10%, even lighter. So you can see it's not red, but it's lighter at 10%. Well, 15% maybe would be good. Yeah, 15% is actually good. So that's an example of how we can add background color. So that is color. And that's pretty straightforward. You can play with it as long as you want. You can use color name if you want here. So you can use crimson here, just like we're adding, just like we're using all the color properties, you can use either of the value that you have here. So if I put this one, sorry, I could simply put that. and you can see it gives it that color. So you can use any of the color properties that we had decided over here. You can use color name, you can use RGB, RGBA, hex, HSL, whatever is going to be comfortable for you. All right, so that's background color. Then we can also add a background image to something. So maybe say, for example, behind this, we want to add the TUC logo. So what I'm going to do is I'll download the TUK logo over here. Do I have one that has a transparent background? Probably no, but it will be a good thing to add the one with a transparent background. Save as. Where is this one located? Where is this project located? Web design course. So let me look at web design course. It's here. So this is where it is under my documents. So actually it's just here. Web design course is here. I'll say TUC logo. And I can see it's a JPEG file. So, well, usually I would create a folder and call it images. And I usually place all my images inside that. That will be the good practice to do. That will be the best thing to do so that you separate your HTML, your CSS, and JavaScript, and even your views in different pages so that now everything goes together. That things that you might not want to load when you are doing version control, but that's story for another time. So let's assume that for some reason, I think we needed to say that the second thing we can add as a background is background image. So besides color, you can do a background image. So for background image, what I'll do here is I'll say this paragraph, I want it to have the background image of TUC. So this paragraph can have that. I can put another paragraph inside it, and I say Lorem 100, something like that. So it's big enough. So I just wanted to make sure that the font is large enough so that you can now be able to see everything inside it, something like that. So since we now have that in place, I'll simply come here and I'll say, get me the paragraph tag. And of course, instead of using this paragraph here, let me just use a break because then it will place them in all the paragraphs. So there's a break here, but this is one thing. All of it is one paragraph, as you can see. All of it is just one paragraph. So I wanted to target the whole of it as a single paragraph, not each individual paragraph separately. So again, shaping your HTML file is going to be very important. So for this paragraph, I can simply say, I want background image. And for background image, you simply put the word URL, then you put the path where the file is located. So I'll say, go to images, and inside images, look for tuclogo.jpg like that. So you realize that now it has put the TUC logo behind the paragraph because I have this whole paragraph. So the whole of it, we have put the background image of TUC. So that's important. But as you can see, my image is small enough. So there are some things that I might want to work on as far as the image is concerned. And one of them is repeat. So by default, it will repeat both X and Y. So if this paragraph was large enough, maybe say I put another break here. Then I put another Lorem 50 here. You can see it's going to repeat both X and Y times. So it's going to repeat on the X-axis and on the Y-axis, depending on the size of the image. So I might want to be able to control how that repetition works. So I have also properties that I can change. For example, I can come here and say, we have what we call background repeat. And by default, I can simply say I want it to repeat along the X-axis. So it will repeat along the X-axis only. I can also say repeat along the Y-axis. It will repeat along the Y-axis only. And I can also say repeat none, which means don't repeat, just add it once. So it's just going to repeat, should be repeat, no repeat. Repeat, no repeat. So it's just going to add it once. Okay, so that's one way of controlling how the image is going to be repeated if it is small enough. Now there is the element of small enough, which is what you're looking at. Of course, you're also going to look at the element of where it is very huge. So when it is very small, it does repeat. When it is large, then you decide what you're going to do with it. Did you say any? You raise your hand, Victor?
My network there got lost. Sijakupata.
At what point? At the repeat part?
Yeah.
So I was saying, usually, by default, when you have a small image, it will repeat both on the x-axis and on the y-axis. All right, but sometimes you might not want that behavior. So what happens is that you want to control how the repetition is going to happen. So we have what we call background repeat. Then by default it will repeat x and y times. So sometimes I want to repeat on the x-axis only, so I'll say repeat x. So as you can see, it's only going to repeat along the x-axis, so it's not going to repeat along the y-axis. But if I try to repeat along the y-axis, then it will repeat along the y-axis. If I don't want it to repeat completely, I will say no repeat. So that way it's only going to place it once and forget about it. All right, so that's what I was talking about when I'm talking about repeat. Okay, are we together up to that point?
Yes.
Now, besides repeat, we also have what we call the position. You can see by default is put top left, top left. So you might also want to change the position of the logo of the background when it is small. So I can come here and say background position. Then you'll decide how you want it. So I can say I want top right. So you see it goes to top right, right? I can also say bottom right. It will go to bottom right. I can also go to bottom left. It goes to bottom left. And I can also place it center. So it places it at the center. So whenever you want it, you can always place it wherever you want it. Okay? So that's the position. That's the position. That's the position element. So besides the position, you might also decide how you want to fill the image or the background. So fill is important because when the image is too small, then you might want to stretch it to cover the entire space. When the image is too big, you might want to squish it to fit the content. So it will depend on really how you want to display the image. Either you want to retain its original dimensions, or you want to either expand or reduce it to be able to cover the section that you are actually targeting the nini for, the background image for. So for that, we use a property called background something. What is it called? I'm not seeing the property here. I'm not seeing the property here. Why is that the case? Okay, just a minute. Just a second. Just one second.
Hi. Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't get. My network is down, so I
Oh,
can't get you.
oh, sorry. I said I was looking for the property that allows me to be able to change the background so that now it is centers the image, or you know, or it can stretch the image, or it can center it, or you can retain its position. Of course, the default is retaining its size. But I wanted to look at the situation where you want to change the image in order to fit in your section. So the property is actually, let me just look at this documentation. Mm, because it's supposed to fill the container. Actually, it's background size. Background size, yeah, background size allows you to. Background size allows you to. Though I was not seeing it here. Oh, it's actually here. This is what I was looking for. For the background size, auto will be the default, which means it should be able to remain as original. Then when you say contain, it will stretch it the best it can to be able to contain the section. And then you also have the cover, which will try to stretch it up so it covers the entire area. All right. So when it comes to that image and you want to alter the size so that now it enables you to be able to automatically fill in your section, you'll use the background size, which you will either use you'll use either cover, or you'll use the default, which is auto, or you can use contain, which means it will try to just stretch it a bit to be able to make sure that it is contained within the space that is being seen. Let me just give you a classic example. I'll pick a very large image, then we'll see how that behaves. We have seen how a small image behaves. Let's go to Unsplash. Let's go to Unsplash. Unsplash. So we'll just pick a very large image from Unsplash. Let's just say college. And we are going to pick, the filter here should be free. We want free images. And this is an example of a college image. And I'll download this one, make it very large. So I have this large image. I'll copy it. I'll come to documents here. I'll come to web design. I'll put it under images here, and I'll say college. So this is actually what type of image is actually a JPEG image. So what I'm going to do is just come back here. So I want you to see the difference. So here I'll put background, and I'll say this should now be college.jpg. So you can see when I say contain, by default this should not have been there. You see this image is so big, I'm literally not able to see it's part of it. So I can come and change and say, well, I want it to be contained. So which means I want it to be squeezed in such a way that it fits this section. So you can see that now tries to squeeze it so that the entire image is visible across the section. But then I also have the option of cover, which means I want it to be squeezed in such a way that it covers the entire section. So you can see now it is stretched in such a way that it covers the entire content, but also some portions of it have been cut out so that it is just able to fit into that particular section. So that's a very important element as far as images are concerned. You can deal with size. Now, let's assume that we have a lot of other contents here, because the other thing we need to do is the attachment. How do we attach the image? Do we allow it to scroll, or is it going to be fixed? So the attachment is also very important. So if I have so much content that is scrollable within this page, does the image scroll with the text, or it remains wherever it was? So that's also another important feature or property as far as images are concerned. So what I'm going to do here is I'll hide this. I'll come and put maybe say break and say lorem 1000. That is a lot of text. As you can see, it stretches. So by default, you can see the image is scrolling with the text. So if I wanted it to be fixed and not scrollable, what I would do here is I'll come and say background attachment. Background attachment. Yeah, it's here. And you can see I can make it fixed, or I can make it scroll. So I can make it scroll in such a way that when I scroll the content, it goes with it like that. But when I make it fixed, it means that it will not be able to scroll. So the image is fixed, and as you see, as I'm scrolling, the image is not actually scrolling. It's actually just contained within the page. Let me make the page bigger. The image is going to be contained within the page. So as I'm scrolling back and forth, you're going to see that it does not actually move. So you can see my text is moving, but actually my image is fixed. But if I remove the image into away and I say it scrolls with the text, it means that as I scroll the text, it also scrolls with the image as we move along. So that's another property of images that we would to have. So when it comes to images, those are the kind of properties that you can be able to change as far as it is concerned. I hope that is clear.
Yes.
Okay, so then there's what we call a shorthand for images. Usually you will not find me doing things like this. So we have what we call the shorthand. So background image shorthand. So for shorthand, it means that you want to write all the properties on one line. And for the properties, you first of all have the color, if any. Then you'll be able to put the image, if you have it. Then you position, if you want to change the position. Then size, if you want to change the size. Then repeat, if you want to change how it wants to be repeated. Then attachment. Probably maybe, yeah, I think I don't know if there's any other property, but these ones are the ones that I use mostly. So I can use background, color, I can change the image size, I can change the position, I can change the size, repeat mode, and of course attachment. So in a nutshell, if I, well, let me just put took here, took logo, and probably maybe center. So you can see it's centered there. Probably maybe I can remove this last portion. It's too much text. So let me remove that. Yeah, so we have that. So if I wanted to put this image and probably I want to add properties like repeat and all that, what I would have done here is instead of writing all this, what I would have done is to say here, background. So I'll pick the paragraph, then background without anything. First of all is the color. I'll simply say RGBA. I want 255 0 0 at 15%. That will change the background color. Then RGBA, not RG, not whatever I've done there. RGBA. So let me just remove this style so that it does not. Let me just. That should be able to. Yeah. So this one was actually applied because it should have been. That shouldn't have applied. How come the color is also, okay? Like I can remove this. You already have it as how come that is not this color should have changed or its body. The body is what is actually messing it up. Yeah, that's what I expected. So I can add the background color RGB, so you can see paragraph background. I'll put the color. Well, even that should have applied. Oh, this is 0 point, not 0. Yeah, so the background, as you can see, has applied. Then I can put an image. So URL, I'll simply say images, took a logo. So you can see that puts the image. Then the next property that you can be able to change would probably be the position. So we can set the position of the image. We want it to be top, right. We want, you can see it's top right. Then also we can change the size. So the size we can say cover. So it covers the entire thing. That is that will be, well, I can before I put the size, I think the position is important. Yeah, the position is important. No, the position. This is that's top right. The repetition should come before. Repetition should. Okay, I think repetition. Where did I put repetition? There's a size, then there's a repetition. Okay, size, then repetition. Size, then repetition. Top right. Then I don't want the repetition. I want the repetition to be no repeat. So it only places it in one place. Then now I can change it to cover so that it covers the whole thing. Well, C cover does not work well. I don't know why, but you get the idea. So when it comes to when it comes to the shorthand, I can simply apply as many properties as possible instead of referring to each and every property one by one. Of course, it's always easy to write this because it's easier to remember. I'm talking about an image, how I want it repeated, its position, its size, its attachment, and so forth and so forth. It's always easy to have that. But for those people who are used to writing it over and over again, you might just want to go ahead and use the shorthand for the image. Is that okay as far as backgrounds are concerned? So
Yes.
mostly you'll use colors or images. Then the images will now have the most properties that we want to be able to change. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Next, I want us to discuss borders. So backgrounds should have been capital. So next, I want us to discuss borders. Borders are the lines or the features that you will draw alongside an element so that you apply some border properties to it. Okay, so borders are important because one, they allow you to visualize a few things here and there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create some new text over here. I'll comment this. I'll create some boxes so that you're able to see how borders work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 divs, actually 4 divs, like that. I'll give this the class of 1. I'll give it a class of 2. Well, I actually don't even need to do this because I can use I can target each element individually. Then I can simply decide how to deal with this. So I have these 4 divs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my styling up here. I'll comment this. Then I'll simply say pick anything that's a div, and I want nth child. So let me have the first child. So for the first child, actually anything that is a div, because this is not practical, I want it to have a height of 100 pixels and a width of 100 pixels. We're going to talk about dimensions later. Then for the first child, I'll want the background to be crimson. So you can see the first one, it's crimson. That's the background. Or I can put a light shade of red. So RGBA 255 0 0 at 10%, like that. Then for the second and third child, now I'm just showing us how to use different selectors so that you see how practically you use them. So instead of first child, I'll simply say nth child. Then I'll say 2. That's the second. So this one is not going to be that. It's going to be 20%. As you can see, it's not 20%. They're not displaying side by side, but you're able to see them from top to bottom. I can use the third one. Well, 20% is 0.2, so it's darker. Now for the third one, I want it to be 30%, even darker. And the last one, that will be last child. I want it to be 40%. So you can see them. Last child, how many are they? They 1, 2, 3, 4. First child, last child, background is 0.4. Yeah, I should see 4. Why am I not seeing the fourth one? That's the last child. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know why last child is not working. Let me use nth child. I don't know why the last child wasn't appearing, but you can see now I have 4 different shades of red, but I want to apply now the borders. You can see I've only applied the color on the inside, on the background. So we want to add some borders to them and see how these borders work out. So borders will basically draw some sort of border around them, okay? So when it comes to border, we first of all start with style. So for borders, we have what we call the border style. By default, it's solid. It's solid. So if I say border style solid, then it will apply a solid style. So let's apply for the first one. Let's give it a border style of solid. So I'll come here and on the first child, let me give it a border style and say solid. So I need to put a semicolon here for it to work. I missed an R here. Now, I've just given it a border style and you can see now it has drawn a solid around it. Okay, so you can see it has added some solid around it and also it is now bigger than the rest, which means we're going to discuss the CSS box model and you're going to see that things like borders and margins will increase the size of content, but things like padding will not increase the size of the content. It will just push it on the inside without changing its size. So that's very, very important for us to note. So border style of solid, we have other border styles. I'm going to apply some other border styles like dotted and dashed and maybe double for the others. So for the second one, I'll simply say border style. Additionally, you must make sure that you have a semicolon at the end of every station. At the end of every command or style. So border style, this one I want it to be dashed. So that will be dashed. As you can see now, that is dashed. The third one, I can use maybe say a border style of dotted, so that you see the difference between dashed and dotted. So again, I'll add semicolon here, border style dotted. So this one, you can see the dashed are more squares, the dotted are small squares. These are more like rectangles, these are more like squares. Then you also have something like double. So you can say border style. I missed the semicolon here. So border style, and I'll simply say here double. So it's going to put 2 double boxes here. As you can see, now I have 2 thin boxes are surrounding the content. So these are the styles of borders that you can be able to use. There are others like ridge, inset, and uh, things like that. You can also be able to use that. But also, you can actually have a border style of none. So if I come here and I say border style none, it means that I want to remove all the borders that it might have. So you can see it doesn't have any borders, which is actually the default. The border style by default is none, not solid. By default, the border style is none. Sorry about that. I had mentioned that the default border style is solid. It's actually not solid. It's actually none. So border style none means remove the border. But if I put something like double, then it comes back and adds it to my content or my selector. So that's border style. Now the next property in terms of border is actually um, the border width. So we have to have border width. So you can change the width of the border. As you can see, by default we have it, I think, at small. So we can either use medium or we can use something like maybe say 5 pixels, for example. It will depend on what kind of unit you want to use. Again, as I explained, we can be able to use CSS units for, we're going to discuss different units that can be used. We have relative units and we have fixed units. So we're going to discuss that later. For now, let's just work with them just like we had used colors, just for purposes of this demonstration. So I might want these borders to be medium. So I'll come and say any div, the border style, so that I apply to all of them. The border width, not style. The border width, I want it to be medium. So you can see now it has increased. By default, it was small. Small is that. Medium is that. Then I can use large and so forth and so forth. Or I can use something like maybe say 5 pixels to make it very, very thick. Something like that. So that's 5 pixels, but I can also use 2 pixels or 3 pixels if I wanted to make it smaller. Now with pixels, I have a lot of control over the kind of size that I can be able to give to it. So I can even make it 10 pixels if I wanted to be thicker enough. While you can see that now that's 10 pixels. That's actually really, really huge. So between the items, let me add just some margin bottom of say 5 pixels on each so that they are separated from each other. I think they'll be more visible that way. This should be margin, not margin like that. Yeah, that way when they're separated like that, you can be able to see how they fall into each other. So 10 pixels is quite big, but if I want with something like 3 pixels, that will definitely make a lot of sense, as you can be able to see over there. So that is the border width, and that's very, very important for us to also work with. Then the third property of border is the border color. Sometimes you want to change the border color to something very, very specific. So we also have border color. So for the border color, you can use any color name, hex value, HSL value, RGBA function, and so forth and so forth. So all the properties we discussed on how to apply colors, you can be able to use those ones when you are applying the border color. So for the border color, we're going to come here. Let me just apply border color for all of them at once. So I'll simply say border. Well, you have to put a semicolon here. Border color, like that. Then I can simply say this brown. So you'll see the border color has changed to the brown that I've selected for all of them, even though each and every one of them has their own different style of borders. So then you might also want to apply borders to sides. And this is very important. You might also want to apply borders to sides. This is very important. So we also have sides, V, border, sides. So to apply to border sides, usually we start with top, left, bottom, right. So we go clockwise from top to right to bottom to left. So we go clockwise if we want to apply to sides. By default, the style will be applied to all the sides, but of course you might want to apply the style to only specific sides. Let me give you a classic example of how this works. So maybe say we want to apply borders on top and the bottom only. So what I could do is I could say border top, that's on the top side. Then I could simply say I could simply it's actually border top style. Sorry, border top style. Border top style, I can simply say is dashed. So for all of them, the border top style will be dashed. Yeah, why doesn't that apply? That is for all the divs. Oh, this one will overwrite it. So you can see the border top here is dashed. So if I removed all these other styles, because see this is CSS, and of course whatever we apply at the bottom will apply. So now you can see if I remove those styles, it means that this style is going to take effect. So border top style is dashed. I'll say border right style. I'll simply say maybe dotted. So you can see this side is now dotted, and I can come and say border bottom style, then make it double. Should be bottom double T, wrong spelling. So that one is double, but you get the idea. So when it comes to sides, you can also apply different styles for each and every side of your border. So that's very powerful because now you have control over how you can actually be able to apply the styles across the multiple sides of your content. There are only four sides. There is top, there is right, there is bottom, and there is left. Any content only has those four sides, which you can actually be able to target individually. Now, the good thing is that there is a shorthand for typing the styles. You don't have to list them one by one like this. So for the shorthand, when it comes to borders, for the shorthand, we have the for the shorthand we have the style. We have sorry the width. No, we start with the width. We are okay. We have the style. We have the width. Actually, I will start with the width because it's one pixel solid here. I will start with the width. Sorry, I will start with the width, then the style, then the color. Okay? Then, of course, we can do the rest. So for shorthand, when you want to apply borders, simply say the width, the style, and the color. So what I could still do here is to come and change all these things. So instead of this width, let me remove those ones. So I can apply styles like this. So I'll simply say border, maybe say 2 pixels, that is the width. I'll say solid, which is the style. Then I'll say color, which is now you can see by default has given it black, and I can give my color to something like brown. So you can see now it has taken the size of the width or the width of the border, the style of the border, which is solid. I can put here dotted if I wanted to. It will be dotted, all of them, or I can put dashed, or I can put inset, or I can put ridge. It will depend on what I want, then the color that I want. So most of the time you'll find most people write it this way. But that just means for the border, I want to apply 2 pixels for the width, style for dash, and brown for color. Okay, and that would actually work much more easily as opposed to listing all the properties one by one. That is just how you manage with borders. Now, one other important aspect of border is rounding off the edges. So sometimes this should be solid. So another property in borders is rounding edges. So rounding edges. So sometimes you want to round the edges of these borders. You can see they are very sharp at the moment. So that might not look very good. If you look at most of the websites, you'll find that some component or most components, they are somehow rounded. You can see this border, this model here is rounded. If you look at these buttons here, the border, the edges are rounded. So even this box here, the edges are rounded. So most likely rounded is a very common thing that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So as we are styling or we are applying borders to our content, we might also want to apply the rounded edges, and that makes our application or site look much more beautiful. So for you to apply the rounded edges, what you would do is probably I'll come to my um, my div over here, because I'm targeting all the divs on my page. Of course, you can target a specific one. If you want only a specific one to have the rounded edges, then you'll apply something called border radius. So I'll come here and I'll say border radius. Then I can decide how much border radius I want to give it. So in this particular case, let me just give you something like 3 pixels. So we're going to discuss units later. So as you can see, when I do that, border radius, that's wrong spelling, it's radius, not wherever I had written. So you can see now the edges are a bit rounded. Let me put them like 5 pixels. You can see they are even more rounded. If I say something like 7 pixels, the rounding is going further and further. If I put 10 pixels, so the rounding is becoming refined as I increase the value. So whenever you want to apply rounded edges, you use the border radius. Now, if you want it to be a complete circle, like maybe you want the content here to be enclosed in a circle, then the border radius will be 50%. So you will use a percentage instead and say 50%, then that converts it into an actual full circle. So maybe you want images to be having this kind of have this kind of a background, then maybe you want to place the image inside here and you want it to be rounded and stuff like that, then that is actually how you would be able to achieve that. Are we clear up to that point? Victor? Okay, so I think the next thing we can do is to discuss fonts. Fonts are basically styles of writing as far as CSS is concerned. So fonts. So writing or display styles. Display text styles. So this is how the writings you see on your screen are formatted or are styled. And that's important because we just don't want to have some sort of text and maybe just some writings, and probably we don't even we're not comfortable with the writing style. It does not match our corporate brand or something of the sort. So fonts are going to play an important role for us. So for fonts, the first thing we deal with is something called font family. Font family. Now for font family, we have two categories of fonts. We have what we call serif fonts, and we also have what we call sans serif fonts. So a serif is something like this. So let me just open Word over here. Let me have Word over here, just to explain the difference between serif and sans serif. So there's a lot going on here. So I'll just close all of them. So so we have some sort of so let me just I'll close this. Let me just open it again. Open a blank document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start typing here. So I'll say something like Times New Roman. I'll say the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So I'll make this one bigger. Uh, so what happens is, if you look at this font, if you look at the T, there is this edge of T. There's something slanting at the back. If you look at the bottom of the T, there are those things that are turning back and forth. So let me just, I don't know if I can highlight them. So let me just draw some circles over here with some light background. So where are the shapes? Should probably I want something like that. So I have that. Let me make it transparent. So I'll now no fill, no line. Yeah, maybe I have a line, but you can see where I am highlighting at this bottom portion over here. That's what we are calling a serif. And also these things I have at the top, this top left corner and this top right corner over here. So we have that, and you also have the ones here, there, and the other one here. Now, those things I've highlighted are what we are calling serifs. So when I'm talking about a font that is a serif font, it means that it has those things on it. And they're only good for printing purposes, not for web purposes. So when you're displaying your content, you decide on what kind of fonts you pick. Are you picking a serif font or a sans serif font? Sans serif means without serif. So sans serif are, for example, things like Arial. So I can repeat the same, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Then I can change this one to something like Arial. So you can see all Arial fonts don't have the serif. So you can see the T is plain, the H is plain, as opposed to this H over here. The Q is plain. So these types of fonts are the ones that are good uh, for display on web pages. So we call them the font families. It's either a serif or a sans serif font. So it will depend on exactly how you want to achieve them. So what I'm going to do is I will just probably close these divs so that our page is plain. Those ones will go away. Then now we can put some text over here. So I can simply put a H1. I'll say about Chook. Then I'll put some paragraph. Then I'll say lorem 30. Now you'll see that by default, the font that displays here is Times New Roman, and this is actually a serif font. Sometimes I don't want to use these serif fonts, and as such, I want to change the font family. Now, the good thing with most systems is that they come with fonts, both serif and sans serif. So when you target a component and you change the font family, you will probably be able to have the font that you are talking about. So, for example, I want to change this font from about Chook to maybe something like Arial or whatever it is, then I am able to change that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here and I'll simply say for all the H1 headings inside my page, change the font family. Then you can see now I have this. So there is Arial Narrow, and all that. These are all sans serif fonts. So I can pick this, and always you can see I have put default font. So if I don't find any of these fonts that I've mentioned, I don't have Franklin Gothic, I don't have Arial, I don't have Arial Narrow, then it will default back to this sans serif font over here. So if the fonts are not found, then just pick a sans serif font. So you can see now this is a sans serif font. I can actually reduce the font weight to light, but of course you're going to discuss that uh, later. For now, I was only interested in discussing the font families. Now, for the other ones, I could use so many other fonts, like I have that. Then for the other part, I can use another font family. So maybe I can say for all my paragraphs, I want a font family of maybe something like a serif font, like maybe say these ones are serif fonts. Actually, this one is a sans serif font, and you can see this is actually even nicer. So I can have as many fonts as well. What's important is the font should be in your system, and now you can be able to use them. Now, the only challenge with some of these fonts is that they don't apply across board, and that's where now we now have an option of loading Google Fonts and deciding how we can be able to use fonts that are standard across board. So you can still, besides using the inbuilt fonts that are within the system, and if that font doesn't exist, then what happens is that the system defaults to something that exists in it. Like in this case, you can see when I go to the end, if all of those fonts are not found, then it's just going to default to whatever sans serif font it has on its target system. Remember, CSS is cascading, which means the browser will try its best to be able to give you whatever you want. But if it's not able to give you that, then it defaults to what it already has within its system. So that's kind of like how this one works. Now, for standardization, we prefer to use Google Fonts because they'll be downloaded online, and then you can use them across any system, and they'll be available so long as the person has access to the internet. So what you're going to do is you're going to come to fonts.google.com, fonts.google.com, for you to use Google Fonts. Then once you pick a font, maybe I can pick something like Roboto here. I have Roboto. There's Playwright here. There is Open Sans. There is Verdana. There's Google Sans. So there's Inter over here. There is another one that I like very common is called Poppins. Poppins is here. So you can use Poppins. Why is it giving me something else? I don't want. That's not what Poppin. So you can see Google Font has a lot of fonts anyway. Why isn't it giving me Poppins? Poppins is actually a font. It's not an Indian font. Why is it okay? I don't know why it's giving me that. But let's say you want to work with something like Roboto as a font. We have Roboto here. Roboto is a nice font. So I want to use Roboto as a font, and you can see how nice it looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come here and I'll say get font. Then I'll say embed the code for that font. Then for embedding, I will just apply these fonts here. So I'll just copy this code. I'll come to my style here at the beginning of my style. Then I will paste that embedding. So you can see it will tell, well, I'll not put inside style, but I'll put it inside the title so that it links the font like that here. So I'll link the font over there. So once I link the font, just like I link external CSS, then I'll have access to the font. So when I come to my page here, instead of saying now using Franklin, I'll simply say use here Roboto. I want you to observe what happens. So if I come here and I say Roboto, sorry, if I come here and I say Roboto, you'll see now it changes this font to Roboto. If I come down here and I say I want Roboto or Comic Sans, so now Roboto will apply here, and now this is going to be standard across the entire ecosystem of that your application is going to run on. So whether it's running on a Mac, on Windows, on Linux, on a mobile device, or a tablet, or a projector, since we are downloading Google Fonts directly here, it will download Google Fonts, and we're going to apply that Google font across your application. So it means the font is always going to be available. So maybe I can use Roboto for headings, and probably maybe I use another font, like maybe say let me use another something. Yeah, that's Roboto. So let me use something like Montserrat, this one for my body. So for Montserrat, I'll pick it, I'll say get fonts. The only thing I'll copy is embed the code, then I'll copy this embedding over here, then I'll replace with my links over here like that. I can actually have all of them. It's not that I need to have one. I can actually have all of them, not a big deal. Then of course when I come to my page, I'll simply say font is actually this is Roboto. Why did I pick Roboto? I thought I picked something else. Oh, Montserrat. So what I'm going to do is I'll say the font is Montserrat over here. So what I'll do is I'll come over here and change my font to Montserrat. So I'll come here and I change the body to Montserrat like that. So when I come here, you realize now the body is actually a Montserrat font. And of course, that way is now how we are able to use Google Fonts within our ecosystem without changing anything. I can change even this top one so that now you see it's Montserrat like that. So you can see it's also changed to Montserrat. So you can actually decide which kind of fonts you're using for your heading, for your footers, and all that kind of stuff. Remember, as I pick more fonts, Google Fonts will embed all of them for me. So you can see here I have Montserrat. Then probably as you move along, you'll also find that it has Roboto. So it has given me both Roboto and Montserrat, so I can be able to actually use all of them if I didn't change what to add and what to remove. So you can see here, I have two fonts that have been selected, so I can remove what I don't want. So that's actually very important for us to be able to understand how we can actually work with different fonts so that now we have fonts for headings, fonts for bodies, maybe fonts for cards and things like that. That way, we have control over what font we can use and of course standardize our look and feel across all the browsers as far as our ecosystem is concerned. I don't know if there's any question up to that point. That's actually quite a lot of things that we have covered, and I'll need you to look into it and try to understand exactly how we can be able to use the things that you've discussed in order to be able to adjust everything. So there's the element of colors, there's the element of backgrounds, there's the element of borders, and of course, finally, we have looked at the element of font and font families. Of course, we are going to expand further on the fonts. Just look at things like font weights and probably maybe font sizes, because you might want different font sizes for different things. So that's also something that you might want to be able to change. So just to give you perspective, so if I wanted a different font size for heading one, so I'll just come here, just so you see how it works out. So for font size for heading one, I'll simply say font size, font size, and I'll simply make it something like 14 pixels. So you can see that becomes smaller. Or we're going to discuss units. I can say I want it to be 1.5 rem. We're going to discuss the units. Don't worry. So that makes it bigger. So if I come to this other font, I can say font size, font size. I want to change it to 10 pixels, which means I want it to be smaller than it is. So you can see it has become smaller. So again, I can also use 0.9 rem. That makes them bigger and so forth and so forth. So then there's also the element of font weight. So these fonts, as you can see, they come in different weights. So when you look at these fonts, when you look at Roboto, it comes in different weights. So there's 400, there's 100, there's 200, all the way to 900. So if I wanted to change the weight of Roboto, this one, to have a different weight other than what it has at the moment, I can come here and change the font weight, and I'll simply say something like 300. That will make it very thin, as you can see. Then if I do something like 400, that makes it a little bit thicker. If I do something like 700, even thicker, something like that. So I might want some level of control on this, something like that. So I don't want them to be too thick, but I want them to be thick a bit. I might also want this one to be very, very light. So I can come and say font weight. Then maybe I give this one something like 300. So it's going to become lighter than it is, as you can see. Or maybe I can even give it 200 if I want it to be even thinner. So you can see it is even thinner. So when it comes to font, that's how we can be able to control how the font family that we use, the font size that we want to have, and the font weight that we want to apply on that particular font, so that now we are able to control the look and feel of the content within our pages. That's quite a mouthful. So I think with those four components in mind, you can now pick a document, add content to it, apply different styles. Of course, you know how to target different elements within a page, apply different styles and see what you can end up with as far as your page is concerned. So we have looked at the biggest things that will control really the look and feel of contents within your page, and that is colors, backgrounds, borders, and fonts. So kindly go through that. Then in case there's any issue, you can get back to me and I'll be able to advise what you could do or how you could go about some of these things in order to be able to achieve the effect that you're looking for. Any question? All right. So if there's no question, then I want to believe that we are okay. I will send out an assignment that you can be, or a lab that you can be able to look at and see how you can be able to achieve that based on what we have covered. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the day. We meet again next time.